We're going to ask our Chief Financial Officer to the stage. Please welcome Carol Reimer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start my presentation, I guess I'll speak to a couple of things. The first is why I got vaccinated. My daughter did a PhD in splicing RNA, and it was the mRNA gene that they attached the vaccine to. So I got some early intel about why I should take the vaccine, so I did for her. Warner's always a little unexpected. I hadn't expected him to share my news today, so my phone has been, it's on silent, but it's been dinging off the hook from many people who, the Grease Trail works extremely efficient, and it proved itself today to work extremely efficient. Yeah. Hey, it's my turn to speak now. I was quiet while you spoke. I do have the intention of retiring. This last year and a half has certainly been a time of reflection for many of us with COVID coming along. And a year and a half ago, that certainly wasn't my intention, but my husband and I have spoken lots over the last year and a half. And we've lost people in our circle to COVID and to other diseases. I have a very close friend who is struggling with ALS, who's in a wheelchair and not speaking anymore. I've had friends who've lost their spouses, and Carrie and I just started to talk and said, what are we doing? What are we doing? Where are we going in our life? And just decided that it was our time to pursue some other things. So I'm not going away. I'm older than you think, so. And I will be around for a while still. And since I'm older, I have to put on my glasses to give my presentation here. So it's been a really busy year of growth at Carrick County Family Services. And our job in finance is to keep that moving forward by paying staff and vendors and supporting staff and reporting to vendors. And that's really where we put our focus this year. We've been working hard using our digital accounting system to try and be as efficient as possible and share as widely as possible with our managers. We have more and more managers taking up the technology and becoming more accountable for their own funds, and we're really pleased with that. We continue to focus on prudent fiscal management with clear and transparent accountability of the funds entrusted to us as we move through these stages of growth. So just want to, I'm not sure who's flipping the slides for me. I assume somebody is, because I don't see anything up here. Is there a, oh, over here. Is it? Okay, great. Flip the slide. As always, I just want to start with a big thank you. I get to stand up here and talk, but it's not me who puts all those details together. It's my staff. It's the finance and payroll staff. And they're always behind the scenes supporting the work that happens in our organization. So these ladies really are the backbone of the organization. They work behind the scenes. They support all the staff and clients at CSFS to maintain transparency and accountability. So we provide services like payroll. I mean, everybody knows about that one, but also payments to staff and contractors and suppliers, reporting to the board, reporting to funders, and all of that stuff has deadlines. And I think as much as many of you can appreciate in payroll, right? They have a deadline that goes out every 2 weeks. And you hear from them if you haven't met that deadline. It's extremely important. In the 21 years that I've worked here, we've never had payroll late. Yep. Excuse me. So we have contractual obligations with our major funders to provide audited financial statements. So every single year, auditors come in and have a look at our work. And so, as always, in the last number of years that I have been here, KPMG comes, it says, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Society at March 31st, 2021 for this fiscal year. And that's extremely important to our funders. They continue to have trust in us based on this statement, that an independent person has come in and said, yeah, what you're giving us is true and reasonable. Thanks. So I have just one diagram here. There are the audited financial statements in your booklet, and you're welcome in your hours before you go to bed to have a look at them, but it's not entirely necessary. What I want to say to you is that Carriers Accounting Financial Services is in a good financial position. We manage our money well, we do a lot of good work, and all is good here, okay? So the financial results for the year ending March 31st, 2021 show an increase in our assets of, and this is where the numbers start to get big as we grow. So the increase in our assets of $6.5 million last year. And that was due mostly to cash on hand. Some of our funders are very generous in that they pay us in advance of when we do our work, and we really appreciate that so that we can continue to pay our bills on time. The liabilities were up about $4.45 million, and this was mainly due to an increase in what we call deferred income. So we received a lot of funds last year, mainly around the COVID area, but it was quite difficult to get all of those services out the door because of COVID. And so we had, I'm just going to look at the number, it was about $3 million, 3.8 I think it was, in deferred revenue that we've rolled over into this year, and our funders have been very supportive of us to continue to do that work into this fiscal year. Revenues were down just slightly. We went down to $44 million. I mean, that increase is, astronomical, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And our expenditures were up slightly, about $4.5 million to $42 million, leaving us a small surplus last year of $1.996 million. This resulted in a net increase in our, what we would call equity or net assets, to $14 million. From the summary statements, you can see that the slight decrease in revenue is very similar to the previous, the numbers were still very similar to the previous year. On the expenditure side, we see a different picture, and that's kind of due to the impact of COVID. And the best thing to do is to look at those little pie charts, right? In days past, our ISK funding was about half of what our FNHA MCFD funding is. And now when you look at that chart, the green number, or the green part of the graph, you can see how much prevention has grown. And that really is due to, the efforts of Mary and her team to bring in new programs. On the expenditure side, really not a lot of difference, except for one issue. Our wages always consume probably 35 to 45%. Our agency is about people helping people. The one place where it is different this year with COVID is normally our travel is a fairly large expenditure. It's usually about 10% of our expenses, and this year I think the number is about 3% of our expenses. So quite a drop in our expenses. We did see that shift from traveling on the roads every day to technology with Zoom. So fortunately, Zoom wasn't a huge expense to us, and so we did have some savings around that in the last fiscal year. So it's been a long road. This is my 21st year here. I first started in June of 2000, and I think I was here, I don't know, like a month. And Warner said, okay, we're ready to do the AGA, you're going to Taclan. I'm like, where? So it's been a long time looking back. When I first started, we had revenue of $4 million and 45 employees. And now we are looking at this fiscal year, 2022, revenue of upwards of $50 million. And Brad will probably speak to it, around 350 employees right now, and continuing to grow. So huge changes in our organization. And just, looking back even 4 years since the CHRT ruling came in, we've seen a 76% increase in our revenue. So revenue went from $25.1 million to $44.2 million in 4 years. And I looked at the our numbers for our workforce. So in 2017, and even though the ruling came out in 2016, I think Cindy spoke to this, that we didn't really get the money until sometime. We started to roll things out sometime later. So in 2017, oh, I got 10. I got 10 at the back of the room. Is this like an auction? Are you voting for me? I know. I'm just giving me a hard time. Sorry, where was I? So in 2017, we had 292,000 hours of work in this organization. And that number sounds like that's a lot of work that happened. But in 2021, we had 443,000 hours of work, a 51% increase over 4 years. So I want to go back and just sort of reiterate for my staff, you can switch, reiterate and thank my staff. These women work behind the scenes. And when I talk about numbers, like a 76% increase in revenue over 4 years, 51% increase in the number of hours worked, that's people and invoices that those women have processed behind the scenes for everybody. So I can't speak enough about how diligent they have been to keep things going while we have sort of blossomed in our growth. $44.2 million in revenue this year. I'm expecting it to be closer to $50 million next year, and mostly with the increase in new services that are coming in with the new programs we're bringing in. $42.2 million in expenditures this year. 141 programs for the directors that get my financial statements. The managers get a subset. They get to go in and pull their 3 or 4 or 5 programs. The executive directors get a report that's 141 pages long every month. And building to a brighter future, I hope. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Carol, and all your staff. I'm just wondering if there's any questions that are live in the room. You can go to the mic at the back if you do, and if there are any questions online. It's often she bamboozles us with all those numbers so that I have a hard time going, what? How much? 50 million, did you say, next year?
50 million.
Question?
Just, Carol, the operative word is that you put your notice in, so you haven't really retired, it's just a notice. And just to highlight, when we first started 31 years ago, our annual budget was $300,000.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Mabel, did you have a question? I saw your hand up. It must be serious. She doesn't even work at Carey Family Services anymore.
Not a question, just a comment. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Carol Reimer for all her work with Carrier-Sicani over the years. I just about fell off my chair when Werner announced that she was retiring. In all the years that I've worked with bands and with BC Aboriginal Child Care Society, I've had the opportunity to work with many different finance people. And in all the years that I've worked alongside Carol, she was always welcoming me into her office every month. We'd go over the financial statements. If I had any questions, I had no problem about questioning her, debating with her, and we always came to an understanding. I really appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared with me in finance over the years, and it'll be such a loss to, Carrier-Sicani when you do retire.
Thank you, Mabel. I have to say, I do some teaching on the side, and so I taught a budgeting course. sit on the board with the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association. It's an association that provides education to finance officers, and education has always been a passion of mine. And I was teaching a budgeting course some time ago, and I shared a story, and I said, I worked with this woman, and I'll tell you her name, Mabel Louie, and lots of people knew who it was, and I said, early in my days, I came into Carriacicani, and I didn't know a lot about the culture of Carriacicani. I grew up in Chilliwack, and I had many friends who were First Nations, but we were teenagers, and we didn't talk about the culture. We just were friends. And Mabel was the person in the organization that taught me the culture, and I taught her the finances. So thank you back, Mabel.
Thank you. Chief Karina?
So I just want to echo what Mabel has said, Carol. It's going to be a huge gap for Carriacicani Family Services if you leave. I say if because as president, I can't accept your resignation. I'm sorry. You've done a great job, and there's going to be a big void.
Thank you, Chief Karina.
Question online?
So it's not a question, but it's more accolades for Carol and more thank you for all of your hard work. And it suffice it to say, all the comments coming in are really positive and encouraging, and I know your phone's just going to keep blowing up, Carol.
Yes, it is. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your support all these years. And like I said, I am retiring, but I will be around.
Thank you so much, Carol.